Improving your metabolic rate. Today, we're going to talk through what is metabolism and why it is important and how we can improve it and what systems affect it the most, right? So, my favorite definition of metabolism is going to be your basic metabolic rate. BMR refers to the minimum number of calories your body needs to function while you're resting. So, I use the words metabolism, metabolic rate, BMR all interchangeably. And I think that the understanding of what actually affects this BMR is highly misunderstood, right? So I think people think that two main drivers of metabolism are going to be this: it's going to be exercise and age. And while both of these factors are true, it's not as high of a percentage as you may think that affects it. And I think that there's a lot of other systems that we need to focus on in order to improve our metabolic rate. So exercise, yes, the more that we exercise will improve our metabolic rate, especially if we're doing it in the form of strength training that's increasing muscle mass. But I think there's also the point that you need to think about is somebody is chronically over exercising. This is going to increase inflammatory markers, is going to decrease our recovery, likely decrease our muscle mass, and all of these factors will actually decline our metabolic rate. So it's not only about the type of exercise that we're doing, but it is also about the quantity and doing it in the right ways in order to increase this rate. The other one is going to be age. I think it's pretty well known that as we age, that we decline our metabolic rate. I think it's 0.5% for every year after 25. Don't quote me on that, but there is definitely a high yield of decline here as we age. And so that's one of the important factors for making sure all the other systems are in place in terms of being able to increase our metabolism. So what actually affects metabolism? There's a couple of key things that I want to touch on here, and I'll go through each one of these. So the first one is going to be muscle mass, and I kind of talked about that. So having a good combination of strength training and cardio, I think, is super, super important for your metabolic rate. Muscle is going to burn more calories at rest. So if we can have a higher muscle mass to fat mass ratio, this is going to be really beneficial for our metabolic rate, right? So making sure that we are not only fueling with enough nutrients to increase muscle protein synthesis and increase muscle mass is important, but having that good ratio of muscle mass to fat mass is going to be really important for driving up our metabolism. The next main topic that I think increases metabolism is going to be caloric intake. So the more energy that we put into our body, the more that our body needs to focus on breaking down these nutrients, and that's going to increase our metabolic rate, right? So this is one of the reasons why I don't suggest chronic dieting, because we put ourselves in such a high stress environment for a long period of time, eating low amounts of food, and this is going to drive down our metabolic rate. The more time that we can spend at maintenance or in a surplus and focusing on muscle mass is going to be super, super important for our metabolic rate. Next one's going to be nutrient absorption. So, for example, different macronutrients are going to be absorbed at different rates. So, for example, protein is going to take more calories in order to break down than carbohydrates and fat. Now, this doesn't mean just to eat only protein and have it in super high quantities to increase your metabolism, but making sure to focus on eating whole foods in a variety of them, increasing your fiber and protein intake while at it will be super important for metabolism versus just eating processed foods that digest very quickly and don't take a lot of time to be broken down in the body. The next one, which I just slightly alluded to, is digestion. So if we're not actually breaking down nutrients, we can't actually use them. So this would affect our caloric intake. It's just going right through the system, and we're not actually breaking down these nutrients that we need for energy and for our metabolism. So making sure that our digestion is primed is super big, and this is going to refer to stomach acidity. This is going to refer to making sure we have enough pancreatic enzymes to break down food. This is going to be our gut microbiome, so making sure that we have good, healthy gut bacteria in there. And there's a lot of different things that feed into our gut health, and making sure that is going to prime our metabolism as well. Moving on to the next one, insulin sensitivity. This is very similar to the digestion and nutrient absorption. Essentially, if we're going to eat carbohydrates, we want to break it down, right? And if we are pumping out way too much insulin and our body is not taking to it and we're not breaking down these carbohydrates, then suddenly that is going to cause higher amounts of inflammation, increases in fat mass, and that is the exact opposite of what we want for our metabolic rate. So being able to not only eat a high amount of calories and carbohydrates is important, but actually being able to break down these nutrients and the body is taking to it very well in order to turn it into energy is super important. So we want to make sure that we're tracking our blood sugar levels and our A1C levels, as well as our blood insulin levels, just to make sure that everything is being optimal in terms of insulin sensitivity. Moving down the list, we have thyroid. This one's going to be probably more important in females than it is males, but you still see, underactive thyroid in males too. So making sure that we have, enough active form of T3 is going to be super important. Thyroid is one of the main drivers of metabolism. And so if we aren't producing enough active T3, this is going to be a major issue for our metabolic rate. So I think there's a lot of different markers that you can look for on a panel to make sure that your thyroid is in good health. But the main one that is usually checked is going to be TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, and the higher this number gets, generally speaking, the worse off your thyroid is. And so there's some optimal ranges that you want to be in, and if they are not in those ranges, then we need to work on that because it is likely that your metabolism is suffering. Hormone levels. This is going to refer to a lot of different things, whether you're male or female. It can refer to cortisol, testosterone, SHBG. It can refer to estradiol, progesterone. There's so many different hormone levels that are very, very important that I could dive into. But essentially, same thing as I'm talking about above. If these systems are not optimal and you have suboptimal hormone levels, the body is not going to be able to run through the processes that it needs to. And this is going to affect your metabolic rate. So not to mention that a lot of these hormones are going to affect muscle mass. And this is, like I said, one of the main drivers of increasing your metabolic rate. So the more optimal our hormone levels are, the better our body composition, our muscle mass is going to be, and this is going to improve our metabolic rate as well. Last but not least, the big one, sleep. You need to be able to sleep 8+ hours a night is optimal in order to fuel metabolism. This also is going to help with muscle recovery. So to be able to, once again, prime that body composition. But I think sleep is very, very, not touched on as much as some of these other subjects. We do burn a lot of calories while we are at rest, sleeping, and the body is not only recovering, but gearing up for the next day and making sure that everything is going to be optimal. So don't sleep on sleep. This is a big one to be able to improve your metabolic rate. If you're, chronically only having 3 to 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night, this is going to take a toll on a lot of these systems that we talked about over time, and that is going to naturally decline our metabolic rate. So if you have any questions on the things I talked about, or this is an area to you that you feel like you're struggling with and you really need some help, I'm more than happy to talk through some of this with you. Feel free to reach out, and I would love to take a look at your lab work, take a look at your symptoms, and see how we can improve that through nutrition, lifestyle factors, exercise, and making sure that we can get you on the right regimen.